Hey guys, Angela here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, make sure that you go and watch some more videos while you're around. Also, like, subscribe, leave some comments. Go ahead and join our community. You know you want to. This video is video one of a new series that I'm going to be doing on my channel where I am going to be doing book reviews. Yay! So I decided that I was going to read at least a book a month in the year 2021. Hopefully this becomes a habit. Also, side note, if you hear a little bit of rattling in the background, that is my lovely radiator. For those of us that aren't new here, we know the Radiator Chronicles. There is absolutely nothing I can do about it. It has a mind of its own. So just focus on me. Focus in on me. Anyway, so I am going to be reading at least a book a month, hopefully forever and ever and ever, but specifically in the year of 2021. Not only am I going to be reading a book a month, I am striving to read books by Black women in my generation, if that makes sense. So of or around my age. And they are going to be sort of like memoirs, which I'm not really a memoir person. So this is new for me. I'm not really into memoirs or like autobiographies and things like that. That's just sort of not my jam. I love to read. I've always loved to read, but typically I am a fiction person. More specifically, I like romance novels. I love romance novels. And yes, I'm talking like 50 Shades of Grey romance novel. I've been reading books like 50 Shades of Grey before 50 Shades of Grey was 50 Shades of Grey. Okay. I just have been in them. I cannot even tell you how many romance like trilogies and how whatever the numbers are for books that has like 7, 8, 9, 10 books in a series. But I love them. I like to use reading as escapism. And so I've typically just gravitated towards romance or like young adult novels or like some sort of fiction. So the books that I am reading this year aren't new to me. I mean, I've read autobiographies and memoirs and things like that before, but I just don't prefer them. But I recently listened to Elaine Welteroth on Second Life podcast with Hillary Kerr. And it was something about that interview. I cannot put my finger on it. And I've heard Elaine speak before. I've looked at interviews with her. I've listened to her on that exact podcast before. So I've heard her speak before, but it was just something about that interview and her talking about her experiences that just sort of drew me to her. So I immediately went on to Amazon and bought her book, More Than Enough, which is what I am going to be reviewing today. And so I decided then that all of the books are going to be by Black women, preferably my generation, right? I think I'm maybe a few years older than, just under a few years older than Elaine. And I just want to read about their experiences and how they've navigated life and, you know, sort of compare and contrast because it's so, I don't know, not weird, but it always surprises me how Black people, we're not a monolith and we come from all of these different upbringings and backgrounds and parts of the world and parts of this country, but our experiences are so similar. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm reading these books. So after Elaine's book for the month of February, I'm actually reading Gabrielle Union's book. So I'm reading We're Gonna Need More Wine. That's my February book. So that is what you can expect from the book reviews on my channel. Now let's get into More Than Enough. So as I mentioned, I am going to be reviewing Elaine Welteroth's More Than Enough. And my overall like synopsis of this book is that it's everything that I was looking for in the books that I want to read this year. It is not just a memoir where she, you know, muses over being biracial and the identity crisis that presents or that presented for her growing up. She talks about it, but she talks about it in a way that's extremely palatable for one. I don't know about y'all, and I hope this doesn't come off wrong or like offensive to anybody. But most of the time when you are hearing biracial people in media, on social media, talk about being biracial and the duality of that race and not being Black enough and not being white enough and, you know, how they navigate that, a lot of the times it comes from a place of like defense, right? But Elaine talks about it in a way, like I said, where it's palatable, but also she explains her difficulty with navigating both races and cultures and things like that. But she also absolutely recognizes that there is still privilege in that duality that some of us do not have as Black people. And so it's just really easy to read her experience with being biracial, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so it was more than just a memoir about like her upbringing or her family and things like that. As I said, she does touch on that. But this book was, to me, about having a dream and having the audacity to pursue that dream relentlessly. Like, Elaine did things that I could only imagine myself doing to get in front of the people that she needed to get in front of to make her dream come true. So I was just in awe of that, especially because a lot of her relentlessness is rooted in faith, and we have that in common. She grew up with a Baptist mama, the same way that I did, that, you know, was a praying mother and, you know, drug her to church and taught her about faith. And so a lot of her relentlessness was rooted in faith, and I can identify with that. That also made reading her story so relatable to me. And then she also talks about all of the help that she had along the way. So from, you know, her mom being extremely supportive, her dad too, her parents being extremely supportive, to, you know, the professor in college that helped her along the way, to the mentor that she had at her first magazine job. So it just really went through all of the setups and the triumphs and the setbacks and the letdowns on the way to the epitome of what her dream was. And then she ended the book by talking about having realized that, oh shit, I have realized the dream that I've had all of my life. Now what? And then having the courage to pursue an entirely different dream after she realized that her dream had been realized, essentially. And so I just overall thought that this was an amazing read. If you are somebody like myself, where I'm not necessarily in a like career crisis, I like my day job and I enjoy it, but there are always things that I've wanted to pursue that are of passion, and I just haven't. Because somewhere along the way after college, I lost that relentlessness that both Elaine and I had in common. And so this book has sort of reignited that in me, and I am so appreciative of that. So much of Elaine's story resonates with me, like on a personal level, even though our backgrounds couldn't have been any different, right? Elaine grew up out west in a 2-parent middle-class home, making up businesses in her, I believe she was a Mexican best friend's backyard. I grew up in the Midwest to a single mother in the housing projects. We didn't have a backyard, and I probably didn't see a Mexican and or a white person or a non-Black person in real life until I was like in junior high school, right? So we were completely different, or we had completely different upbringings. But as I said, we did have that Baptist mama that loved church in common, right? So we are both rooted in faith in the same way. But so many of her other experiences I also resonated with, even though, you know, we grew up so differently. Like, we both knew that there was this world that was bigger and grander and bolder than the one that we currently lived in or that we were brought up in. And we were both determined to get out into that bigger world. But I think where we differ is that Elaine took it a step further. She had more audacity, as I said, than I did. But I feel like Elaine took her audacity a step further. And granted, my mom passed away when I was really young, and I didn't have as stable of a support system as she did, but I still feel like a lot of her audacity just came from herself, and I didn't have as much. So I found myself in tears, especially when she would discuss some of the bold things that she did in order to put herself in front of the people that she needed to be in front of to achieve the goals that she did, because I did not have that amount of audacity growing up. I just did not. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not diminishing my own accomplishments as compared to Elaine's. We don't do that over here. I am extremely proud to have had enough audacity to uproot myself out of the only environment that I ever knew, to go to college, something that nobody in my family had ever done, be successful at that eventually, and then, go off to get a master's degree, work a corporate job, something that nobody in my family had gotten to do. But I was only audacious to a certain point. I was extremely careful, and it was a lot of dreams and aspirations that I had that I was afraid to pursue because there was a chance that I wouldn't be successful at them. And I couldn't be a failure, if that makes sense. Whereas Elaine had all of the audacity, and I absolutely loved reading about it because, I know that we say that we shouldn't have regrets, but I'm like, it's okay to imagine what if I had pursued broadcast journalism in the way that I wanted to. What if I had cold call somebody at BET or MTV or E or something like that and say, hey, I really want to intern for you. I would love to host 106 in Park. I would love to host TRL. I would love to host E! News. What if I had that audacity? What would my life have been like? And so it made me think about that, not just from like a past perspective, but now, because I am in a place where I am pursuing something that I've always wanted to do, but I was sort of afraid of failing. And so what would it look like if I had the audacity to just pursue it relentlessly in the way that Elaine has pursued everything? What reading this book and Elaine's words did for me is remind me that all of those dreams and aspirations that I wasn't audacious enough to do then, I can still do now, right? Especially because she wraps the book up as she's tending her resignation to Teen Vogue, and she is moving on to pursue a new dream after she has realized, oh shoot, that dream that I had as a little girl in my best friend's backyard has been realized. There is nothing else that this dream can offer me. I have reached the mountaintop of this, but I have so many more. And yeah, I'm 30, but I am going to tackle that. Whether I have to start at the bottom and work my way up, I'm going to do it. And so it was just inspirational to me because, here I am doing something that I've always wanted to start a YouTube channel. For years, I've been wanting to do it. I just never thought that I would be successful at it for whatever. I don't know. I don't have a real reason as to why, but I would do things that was kind of like a YouTube channel, right? So I would start a blog, or I would start a website, or I would start a podcast, but never a YouTube channel because I didn't think that I could be the talent, the face, if that makes sense. And I don't know why. It's not an insecurity thing. It's just I don't want to fail thing, right? And so Elaine reminded me that you have to have audacity, and you have to have faith, and you have to have active faith. And what happens when you put your faith in God and when you rely on what you know about Him to be true. And that's that He has a plan for your life. And as long as you are walking in active faith, that plan is always there for you. And so, girl, I'm about to cry now. Because I'm telling y'all, I cried so much reading this book. But I want to talk about a couple points in the book that really, really stood out to me. And then we'll wrap it up because I don't want this to be too long. So a few things stood out to me in the book that I just wanted to touch on really quickly before I wrapped up my review. One was her relationship with her mom. It almost reminded me of the feeling I got when I read Michelle Obama's book. And she talked about how her mom was extremely supportive, and she allowed them to just be whoever they were, right? Within reason. They had to be respectful. Mamas don't play that. But she allowed them to explore every little interest that they had, and she supported them in everything that they did. And I noticed that in the books that I have read, like Elaine's, like Michelle Obama's, that those type of people generally have a mother or parents that are extremely supportive of whatever it is that they want to do. I don't care if it's shoveling shit, excuse my language, right? As long as you're the best shit shoveler out there, their parents was there, handing them the shovel. And so I think that plays an intricate role in how tenacious kids are about the things that they like to pursue, right? I think it's important that parents support their children's dreams, whatever it is. Even if you don't understand it, you have to support it. You have to support it. I remember one particular anecdote in the book where she was going down to her first shoot with Ebony magazine, and she had to drive from, don't get lit, I'm not good with geography, but she had to drive a couple hours from where she lived to the shoot in LA. And, she had packed up her little car and she was about to drive. And as she was getting in the car, her mom came and hopped in the car. And she was like, you think I'm going to let my baby drive, by herself to her first big job? I'm not doing it. And she went with her and she brought her food. And Elaine didn't know that she needed that until her mom did that. And so when I read about relationships like that with parents, specifically with mothers, because I lost mine so young, I don't know, it just touches me in a special way. So I always tell my friends and people that are parents that are my age, you have to support your children's dreams, no matter how ridiculous they sound. I wish I had someone to have done that for me, essentially, is what I'm saying. The second thing that really stood out to me is how many different mentors that she had. And these aren't people that necessarily just fell in her lap. Some of it was serendipitous, but she was really good about pursuing wise counsel, not just from anybody, but from people that she wanted to be like. And I think that that's important, or people with lives that she would want to lead, right? So her first mentor, I always forget this lady name. I feel really bad, but the lady that worked at Essence magazine, Ebony magazine, I'll put her name on the screen. That was sort of her first mentor. This is the person that she sort of cold reached out to, and this is how she got in at Ebony magazine. When she was in college, her professor, right, she became her unofficial mentor until she was her mentor. And then later on, when she was making her transition out of Teen Vogue, it was Ava DuVernay, right? And so she always sought counsel from people who were able to impart the type of wisdom that she needed in her life for what she was trying to accomplish. And I just found that so awe-inspiring, because that's another thing that I didn't do. I never sought out mentors and things like that. And it plays into this fear of rejection. I've always had this huge fear of rejection, and I'd rather just not say anything than be rejected. And I'm learning now as I get older and older that ain't the way, right? And as I said earlier, I don't think I'm too old. So I'm at the point now where I'm looking for some mentors. I'm a 37-year-old that is looking for mentors, and I'm not ashamed to say that at all. And then the last thing that I'll mention really quickly, because I don't want to give away too much of the book in this review, is her recollection of when the announcement was made that she had been chosen to be the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue. And, she was the first this and the youngest this, right? And it was this great accomplishment on the surface, but behind closed doors, Condé Nast was sort of bullying her, right? She wasn't getting paid as much as the other editor-in-chiefs at the other magazines within the company. She had this weird hybrid role or title, and essentially she wasn't being treated in the way that the opportunity was lauded, right? So behind closed doors, all of the things that they were encouraging young girls and young ladies to be, negotiate for yourself, ask for what you're worth, stand up for yourself, all of these things she wasn't doing behind closed doors. She felt like her back was against the wall because she either went in and negotiated and possibly lost the opportunity to realize a dream that she'd had all her life, or she just takes it and shut up and be the first and be this hero, right? And so it really had her in a rock and a hard place, and I felt so bad for her in that moment, because I remember being like, yes sis, and to find out that it was such a tumultuous time for her, I just was like, wow, but also I am not surprised at all, right? So I just absolutely enjoyed this book. It was so many gems, with so many lessons. I probably put a million quotes in my Instagram stories throughout the month that I was reading this book from the book, because it was just that amazing. I absolutely enjoyed it, and I 100% recommend it to all Black and little brown and women of color, and even white women. You can learn from this too. If you're a white woman, you may want to read this too, particularly when it comes to trying to be an ally to your Black sisters in the workplace. You might want to read this as well. And I just thank Elaine for being so open and honest and sharing. I personally took away a bunch of gems, even as a 37-year-old woman, not necessarily pivoting in my career, because I ain't going nowhere, right? I'm gonna keep my day job. I like to know where my money coming from. I ain't that audacious, okay? But I now feel like I am encouraged enough to have the audacity to pursue passions in a way that I never have, because I read this book and it sort of gave me a kick in the ass. So anyway, this month's read, February, is Gabrielle Union's We're Gonna Need More Wine. So I'm going to dive into that today, and I will see you next month with a review of that book. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this review. A little unconventional, but this is Angela style. If you aren't already, make sure that you have subscribed to my channel, like this video, share it out to your friends if you feel so inclined. And make sure you're following me over on Instagram. My handle is Angela_BE, and I will talk to you all in the next review. Bye.